Welcome back to NC Realtors Redefined, the NC Realtors podcast. On this episode,
if you don't start the work and you ignore all of the negative, whether it's trauma or just negative experiences in your life, and you just keep going a million miles a minute, it will eventually force you to stop.
But first, do you have feedback on a story or topic that you'd like to hear covered on this podcast? Then give us a call at 336-550-4437. When leaving your voicemail, be sure to tell us your name and where you're from. Your comments may be used on a future episode of NC Realtors Redefined.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gaby Morello. I'm a realtor in North Carolina with Raleigh Regional, and I actually live in Sanford, which is a small town. It's in Lee County. And today I wanted to talk to you about some stuff around mental wellness and just navigating life, not only with a chaotic career, but also with the storms of life that seem to come our way all the time. And I got the opportunity this past year to travel to different associations around the country through my position with National Association of Realtors, YPN Advisory Board, and kind of share this message. I got to do sound baths and introduce people to different forms of healing and really just get vulnerable and share my story with people so that leaders and realtors and everyone in between would feel comfortable connecting with each other on a deeper level and not waiting until we're, very far in life to start our healing journeys and to grow awareness around certain things. So as a child, if you guys know what ACEs are, adverse childhood experiences, there's some sort of system where you get a score on this test, and it basically says if you have a certain score, you will more than likely have certain diseases and chronic illness as an adult. And so at the time when I read about that study, I was on my local United Way board, and it really opened my eyes to how childhood trauma, it affects us in our adult lives. And I had been doing fine. I had always survived. I came from kind of a parental abandonment situation. There were different things that happened there. I was a teen mom, and I actually had 3 kids by 20 years old and was a single mom. So I was just kind of trying to survive and get through life. I ended up working at an airport, refueling airplanes for a few years, just everything in between. But when I read about that study, I was like, have I been just going a million miles a minute and not actually dealing with the things on the inside, the things we don't like to talk about, and trying to achieve all of these things when really the work was on the inside. So that was kind of like part 1 of growing awareness around healing. Fast forward a few years, I ended up getting my real estate license. 2 years in, I started a small company and ran a brokerage and still practice real estate, raising my kids. And I just also board service, community service, all the things. I think as volunteer leaders, we're all kind of doing that. We're just jumping in to help wherever we can. But I think a lot of us also experience what we call burnout, and where we're not really taking care of ourselves at the level that we can. So I had a few episodes of burnout. I would kind of take time off for, a month or 2 and then dive back in full force. And then I had a personal kind of spiritual journey in 2020 during COVID. And I really started to shed away materialism and chasing kind of like surface level things. I had been doing that, I think, to just feel better. Like if you like shopping, you get a little dopamine boost after a shopping spree. And I actually became a Reiki practitioner, which is a form of energy healing, and a sound healer. So if you see me at conferences, I've probably had my sound bowls. Sometimes I offer them in the evenings, and it's just to open people up to, like I said before, different forms of healing that are available to us. So I went on that journey this past year, in addition to traveling to different states to talk about this at different associations. I would also go to festivals and set up what we call a medicine tent, where people would come in and receive energy, drumming, sound healing, different forms of healing. And it was a really beautiful experience. And so what I like to talk to people about, especially when I'm in small groups or I have the opportunity to have one-on-ones, is what's your reason that you're going at the pace that you're going? And I think in this business, we love to say, like, what's your why? And a lot of people will say, my kids, my family, something that's really close and important to us. But if you ask yourself, what is your why, from an inner perspective of unhealedness? And in my case, I realized that because of my abandonment wounds that I thought I had already worked through, I was chasing this endless success. It was never going to be enough. And that was the issue. There's nothing wrong with being successful, but success is very subjective. And who was I trying to prove something to? Who was I trying to outperform? And it was always myself. And I realized it was a feeling of unworthiness that kind of lived in my heart, where I felt like I had to achieve all of these things, and I might feel good and worthy for, a couple days, a couple weeks, but it never lasted. And now I can honestly say that I feel whole and worthy and all of those things outside of my career, outside of being a mother, just kind of existing with nature and my animals. And it is the most peaceful experience and feeling that I've ever had. So, of course, I have become very passionate about helping people feel comfortable opening up and starting that very important work. Because if you don't start the work and you ignore all of the kind of negative, whether it's trauma or just negative experiences in your life, and you just keep going a million miles a minute, it will eventually force you to stop, whether that is some sort of chronic illness, whether it's a breakdown, burnout. The clock does tick on that. We have wonderful human bodies and minds, and we have to care for them in the same way that we care for other people. We care for our kids and our partners and our community. And I would say, probably 5 years ago, maybe even like 4 years ago, I would not really be talking about this. I would feel super uncomfortable being vulnerable, because at the time I looked at vulnerability, especially in myself, as weakness. I would not want people to see me as weak. I would want them to see me as strong and successful, and that I could handle anything. And it's not that some of those things aren't true, but again, we all have to be vulnerable at some point so that we can start the work. And what I've noticed in my travels this past year is, when I'm vulnerable and I share my story, other people come up to me after, and, some of them are crying. They feel comfortable and they tell me what they've been through or what they're going through. And it's a reminder that, yes, we're entrepreneurs, we're realtors, we're community members, we're all these things, but we're also people, and life is hard. And it's important that we don't just walk around and pretend all of the time that career and success is the only thing that matters. As a realtor organization, we are our own community and we have to take care of each other. So last January, the father of my children, we were not together, but he passed away from an overdose. He struggled with addiction his whole life. My kids were, I believe, 12, 13, and 14 at the time. And at the same time, I was separating from my husband. So me and my kids, we moved to a new house. We kind of started over. I also had a baby goat in a wheelchair I was caring for who passed away. This was all within like a 60-day time frame. And, I didn't really talk about it publicly. I didn't want clients or people to think that I had too much going on and I wasn't able to work, because I definitely needed to work now again as a single mother. But once I got comfortable talking about it more on one-on-one, people were like, how did you go through that and just keep going? Like, we couldn't tell anything was going on. And really, I thought about it and I was like, wow, I really did kind of stand rooted during all of that. And it's not that it wasn't hard, but I know that the work that I had been doing, taking that inner journey, focusing on mental wellness and health and slowing down a little, is what got me through that. And I think a lot of times people are just so unprepared for trauma and the storms that come into their life. And of course, when you experience anything, death, divorce, all of the things that hit us and the ones we love all the time, it's not easy. But there is an easier way to navigate those things if you do start doing that work on the inside and taking care of yourself. And that can look like anything. So it doesn't have to look like what I do and what I share with people. One thing that I have noticed in our incoming leadership for NC Realtors is the discipline in the gym. I really admire that. I think discipline with your body and your habits creates a very strong mind. That's something that I am working on as well. So your self-care can look like anything you want it to, but it has to be authentic and it has to be real for you. It can't just be a checklist item where you're like, okay, I rushed through this and I did it. I'm healing. It has to be something you really feel. And so for me, I practice meditation. And when I tell people this, they're always like, oh, my mind doesn't shut off. I can't meditate. I've tried. But it's called a practice because you literally have to practice it. And it's kind of like the fake it till you make it. You have to fake meditating until you are actually really meditating. And, I have busy days and mornings too. I don't even know how many animals on my property, and I'm always bottle feeding something. Sometimes I only have time for a 5 or a 10-minute meditation. And that's okay, because it's about being consistent in the practice. And you guys, if you have any interest in meditation, you're welcome to reach out to me to ask for tips. There's a really good app I use called Insight Timer. You can have guided meditations on there, which is where someone is talking you through, trying to kind of slow you down. Or you can just have really cool music, frequencies, things that kind of like feel good to your body. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me with questions. And another thing that I do is I sit with nature as much as I can. I have a favorite tree outside, and when I've had a long day, I'll just go out there and lean against it and I live on the water, so I'll look at the water and I will try to be present. So I'm not really scrolling on my phone. I'm just taking in the present moment and the beauty of this earth. And speaking of presence, that is something that I think is really hard for us as realtors, especially to do, because We don't have the luxury of having a task list that can ever be fully completed. We can always do more marketing. We can always do more lead generation, whatever the things are. We could always be doing more. But whatever you're doing, it's important that you are present so that you can get into the flow state. And I think people talk about flow states, when they're talking about yoga, but really you can get into the flow state with anything you're doing in your life. So when I cook, for example, I have candles lit. I use real dishes. I really kind of smell the seasonings that I'm using, and I turn on music, and I'm not rushing. Oh my gosh, I have to cook this really fast for my kids and get them fed and move on to the next thing, because I like to enjoy my life, and I'm a bit leisurely. So I kind of romanticize all aspects of my life when possible, and that's really made a difference. Not only in how I feel in my body, which I would say I'm mostly healed from anxiety. I haven't been on anxiety medication for quite a few years, but I think it's also made me a kinder and more patient parent, because I'm not constantly rushing to get to the next thing. I'm sitting in the present with what I'm doing. And so I meant to grab my gratitude jar to show you guys, but it's basically a big pickle jar, and it says gratitude on the front. And I have a set of note cards on my coffee table, and a few times a week I make sure that I write something I'm thankful for, and I stick it in there. And when people come and visit me, I also have them write a little note of gratitude. And I call it a gratitude practice because, again, gratitude is not something that you just start feeling one day. You have to train your mind to be thankful for the now, regardless of what you're going through. There's so much to be grateful for because you're here, right? And life is precious. None of us are promised tomorrow. So even something as simple as that, you can start. That takes 2 seconds to jot something down on a card, and you do that consistently, or meditation consistently, for a couple of weeks, and you will start noticing a difference. You'll start noticing the little things around you that maybe you were too busy to notice before. And if you're listening to this and all of this sounds like, I don't have time for this, I'm too busy, trust me, that was me a few years ago. I didn't read self-help books. I would have kind of laughed at this type of thing. But I guess in my 30s and with some maturing and also a few episodes of burnout and my spiritual journey, I realized that the integration of who you are authentically is so important. Integrating your career, all your positions, whether you're a parent or a spouse, putting all of those kind of into one pot and becoming yourself is the goal. We are the greatest project we will ever work on, and you can't ignore yourself. Your whole life, it is going to come back, and you want to be prepared for that. So if anybody has questions, I know I kind of ran through a lot. I didn't get to talk much about sound healing, but if you're interested in bowls, meditation, Reiki, gratitude practice, or if you're even just going through something that nobody knows about, because we all, hop on Facebook and pretend we're okay all of the time, feel free to reach out to me. I am always available to give a listening ear and to provide support. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for listening to NC Realtors Redefined. Be sure to never miss an episode by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud.